fact, there are still many there. There are many. I believe that those people, they said that they are deep.
When you begin to hide yourself,
all the business I'm doing, how to keep business, like customer business, receipts.
You're welcome to another episode of Talking Migration. I am Oyin Adekunle. Now, despite attempts by the Nigerian government to combat human trafficking and provide support for survivors, care for victims is still severely lacking. And that's according to a new report released by the Human Rights Watch. But as would be expected, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, has debunked the claim, describing it as baseless and unfounded. Find out more in this next report.
Nigerian authorities are actually detaining these women in shelters, in government-run shelters, and further traumatizing them. The first thing and immediate thing that they can do is stop detaining them in the shelters, because clearly that is causing them a lot of stress and distress, and is not helping people who have already gone through so much. So we want the government to run what we call open shelters and more community-based programs.
That was the submission by the Human Rights Watch that triggered a misunderstanding between NAPTIP and the body. The Human Rights Watch, in a 90-page report released in Abuja, said the Nigerian government have failed to provide the assistance that survivors of trafficking need to rebuild their lives, stressing that the government unlawfully detained many of the already traumatized women and girls. But the agency responsible for addressing issues of trafficking in Nigeria, NAPTIP, is vehemently rejecting these allegations.
After going through the report, we are bold to say that the entire report is a mere figment of the imagination of the writers, as the narratives fall below the standards in the operations of our shelters, as well as the standards for our victim support and assistance. It is important to note that the agency observes all the world's best practices in victim handling as enshrined by the Palermo Protocol, which includes that no victim shall be kept in a shelter against his or her own will. The activities in our shelters are further guided by the National Policy on Protection and Assistance to Trafficked Persons in Nigeria, a national document that has also been adopted by ECOWAS in dealing with victims of human trafficking.
Director General of NAPTIP, Julie Okadonli, told journalists that Human Rights Watch must have been misinformed about the operations of the agency. She said the international body also goofed by not cross-checking its facts from the appropriate office before releasing its report.
The Human Rights Watch report mentioned some unnamed officials of the agency, as well as unidentified victims whom they claimed to have spoken with, and they never spoke to any authorized person. This is quite curious. Again, why would the organization visit the headquarters of the agency for input a few hours to the release of their reports, and also did not reflect the comments of the official they interacted with yesterday? Could it be that the Human Rights Watch had decided on its narrative and only visited the agency's headquarters for formality's sake? I would like to request the general public, the local and international media, to disregard, discountenance disinformation as untrue, a pack of lies, and an attempt to tarnish the image of NAPTIP and the Nigerian government for whatever ulterior motive the Human Rights Watch wants to achieve.
NAPTIP assures its local and international partners that it will continue to abide by international standards and best practices in the protection and assistance to trafficked victims.
We'll keep our eyes on that story and keep you updated as events unfold. But moving on now, there have been increasing calls for African leaders to take actions that will end the deaths of their citizens attempting to cross to Europe through irregular means. It is against this backdrop that a 3-day parliamentary sensitization forum on migration in West Africa was held in Niger Republic. We'll be talking about that shortly after this break. Don't go away.
Nigeria, there are still many there. Oh. There are many. I believe that those people they said that they are deep.
When you begin to hide yourself
Of the business I'm doing, how to keep business, like customer business, receipts.
Thank you for staying with us. As I said earlier, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Parliament, is making moves aimed at addressing the issue of irregular migration in the region. At a sensitization forum held in Niamey, Niger Republic, lawmakers and experts across the sub-region explored different options, including the strengthening of the private sector to end the ugly occurrence. Many migrants are still plying hazardous smuggling routes across the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea, risking human rights abuses and indefinite detention. Parliamentarians stressed that the genuine reasons for the departure of young migrants from their countries of origin includes the quest for better lives. They therefore called on governments of member states to create employment and policies to improve the socio-economic well-being of citizens.
Really worried about the menace of migration taking place in Africa, especially in the ECOWAS sub-region, and the bad image this is giving us in the outside world. I'm really motivated by this conference in that it will give us the opportunity to brainstorm on the way and manner we can control this menace. It is really worrisome to most of us to see our youths, women being degraded in the European countries, and then some being enslaved, you know, and it makes any patriotic African to get worried. And we want to see at the end of this conference, you know, be able to articulate a position that we hope will be adopted by the various countries, especially in the West African sub-region, on how to tackle this challenge. And I'm very hopeful that at the end of the day, we will be in a position, if not stopping, but to curtail the rate of migration from our sub-region.
The migration factor in West Africa is a challenge to us as a government and people. We are losing our young people to Europe and America. It's hard time that decisions and actions are taken to ensure our young people return. And Niamey, Niger is an area in which many young Africans use as a venue to pass to go to Italy and to go through Libya and Italy, hoping they will find greener pasture. So African leaders and those of us in parliament feel challenged that we have the responsibility to ensure that we take actions to reduce the migration issue. And to do this is to ensure that we take political decisions that will create an enabling environment for young people to remain in Africa. Africa is a home to us. We should not abandon Africa. So we as political leaders need to take actions and decisions to ensure our people remain home. It is a risk, it is a lost venture to see young Africans venture in the desert, thinking that there is opportunity for them in Europe. What you can get in Africa, you can get in Europe. As a country and people, those who are to take our culture the one step are young people. If all of the young people leave Africa to go to Europe in search of greener pasture, what happened to our culture? What happened to our tradition? What happened to our way of life? So African leaders need to take those actions.
The International Organization for Migration, IOM, also joined the call by demanding that countries begin to celebrate youths who are succeeding in their countries as a way to prove that there are opportunities that can be harnessed in Africa as well.
So many young people, they have just lost hope in the continent. They think that migration is the only path to success. So it's like migration equals success. It's like a rite of passage, so to speak. So the fact that maybe other people are going abroad and succeeding doesn't mean that everyone must succeed abroad. There are also some good examples of people who have succeeded without migration. People who have really stayed at home, worked hard, and made it. I know that these kind of examples are not light. We don't share so much light on those who have succeeded without migrating, but these are examples that we need to sort of like pay more emphasis on, so that young people can see that at least there are ways that they could also succeed at home. So the main issue is really the fact that people young people especially have lost hope in the countries. They have lost hope in the government. They think that nothing can be done with their situation. They think that it's only when they migrate that something can happen, that they can make it in life. So it's up to us to change that narrative. And how do we change the narrative? It's like how we as a people, as a community, starting from the family, how do we see success? How do we explain to our young brothers and sisters? Because sometimes you hear a mother even say, you sit here, your friends have gone abroad, they are making money, you just sit here not doing anything. So those kind of languages, they start to instill in the young person a sense of failure. The person thinks that he or she has already failed. So the only way that he or she can get out from this bondage of failure is to go elsewhere where he thinks that he's going to make it. So it starts from the family, from our community, and also from our government. Like, what can we do? What kind of programs, what kind of mechanisms are we putting in place to make sure that these young people, they see hope instead of just losing hope?
Now, all that happened on the first day of the meeting. Proceeding to the next day now, African leaders came under fire again. This time, parliamentarians outrightly blamed leaders for fueling the irregular migration crisis. Parliamentarian from Nigeria, Sadiq Ibrahim, says the craze to remain in power by heads of state and government has contributed in no small measure to the impoverished state of most countries in the West African sub-region.
Poverty is usually brought about by lack of good governance, lack of imbibing democratic tenets, democratic values. Up till now, in 2019, in West Africa, there are still presidents who change their constitutions like they change their underwears. They shift time for election, they rig election, and they don't want to leave. For as long as you don't enlarge the political space for other people to come in and contribute to the development, you can't know everything. You can't serve a country for 8 years and continue to serve and serve and serve, even if you run out of ideas. This is the genesis of all that we are talking about here, is poverty. The things that endanger poverty, other than migration, other than poverty, is climate change. This there is something we can do about it. Developed countries, they pollute the atmosphere more than we do. But since we're in a one world, one globe, whatever pollution they put in the atmosphere, it comes to us. But it is not for us here to sit down and address the root causes, because we know the root causes. And we are parliamentarians who oversight the functions of executives in our own countries. If we don't talk to our presidents to respect term limits, respect constitutional provisions, then all we are talking about here is just we are playing the ostrich.
Some of the recommendations made include the creation of a special office for the documentation and registration of all youths who intend to travel out of their countries. This, he said, will ensure proper monitoring.
I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, that every country in this sub-region should open an office for registering the youth that may want to go out. First of all, register them if they want to, because most people run away from home. The younger ones run away from home. If you can make them feel that, look, fine, you can go if you want to, but please try to play safe. Try to come back if it is difficult for you, because it is hotter out there. Show them, sensitize them that it's so easy to cross the Sahara. Even if you cross the Sahara, it is not easy to cross the Mediterranean. But even if you cross the Mediterranean, the color of your skin will give you up where you are going to. So this is what we should be telling our own young people. Register, open a register of members, tell them that fine, you are free to go. But please, if it is hotter there, come back. Then we embrace them with open arms when they come back.
Ibrahim further called for urgent needs to check the smuggling of arms into Africa from Western countries.
Most of these transporters are former combatants who, in the absence of combat in Niger, have now found a lucrative business of transporting people across the Sahara. Now, we have to find work for them. But most importantly, when they go, if they transport people to Libya, in coming back, they bring in arms. Today, West Africa is no longer safe. There's no road that you can follow. In the past, we come from Nigeria to Niger, we go to Burkina, up to Mali, our business will go there without being molested, without being killed, without being robbed, without being raped. But today, you cannot do that. In Nigeria, you cannot even go to a farm that is a kilometer away from your village. They can kill you. Agriculture is suffering, trade is suffering, industrialization is suffering, simply because we cannot keep the borders safe. So if we can address this issue of smuggling of small arms and light weapons, and now even machine guns come from Libya. And I believe the West, since there is no country in West Africa that manufactures even bullet, the West break up of the Soviet Union allows people like Lithuania, Latvia, and other countries that manufacture weapons to bring them into Libya and sell. We as African leaders, West African leaders, must wake up in unison and tell Europe that what they are transporting here is dangerous for us.
ECOWAS Female Parliamentarian Association also suggested that borders be fortified and that all human traffickers and smugglers be persecuted to deter others in the illicit act.
We have to come together to make sure that we eradicate, we pass laws, if really we are serious to make sure that we stop this illegal migration. And also, to end is to fortify our borders. Because if we don't fortify, they will keep coming, they will keep doing all sorts of things. These madams, we should try to trace them. As women, they are our colleagues. They are women. They should stop that because we are vulnerable. We call ourselves vulnerable, and we are seeking, like ECOFEPA is there, we will work together to make sure if any woman is found sabotaging the plan that we are going to bring up, we'll punish that individual. Because we should start to take the first ball rolling as women. They say they are madams. Why do you want to take your children out there to go and be punished? If you see some of the clips that we see in the WhatsApp, in the forum, it's heart-rending, it's heart-bleeding. You see the people beating up women, sending hot water in their whatever. So we need to address that as women.
Lastly, the forum was wrapped up by the Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament himself, Mustafa Siselo, who provided the outcome of all discussions held among the participants at the forum. Siselo also recommended that the tight restrictions on free movement in the course of migration be loosened to reduce the level of smuggling activities. Now take a listen to him make these recommendations.
The recommendations emanating from this forum indicate clearly what the various responsibilities are. The ECOWAS member states as a regional organization, but responsibility of transit countries and the international community as a whole. Amongst the recommendations that were just presented, I wish to highlight the responsibility that member states have to concretely address training and job creation for the youth, and this to reduce the temptations of immigration with all the risks, attendant risk. It is therefore useful for budgetary allocations to be revised upwards and for the necessary resources to be mobilized for that. Along the same lines, ECOWAS should also accelerate the establishment of community projects, in particular with regard to infrastructure and industrialization, and more resolutely remove the artificial barriers to free movement of persons, services, and capital within our community. Such progress would allow for us to strengthen the efforts made by member states in order to achieve heightened impact in terms of jobs. Deputy Speaker, dear colleagues, it is important for us to highlight the relevant recommendation regarding the responsibility of destination countries, in particular countries of the north. We welcome the fact that as MPs from West Africa, we have to assume our responsibility by calling for renegotiation of the economic partnership agreement between West Africa and Europe in the area of migration. The fact that we soften the conditions for obtaining visas would encourage regular migration, which is a factor of cultural exchange and development both for the countries of origin and the host countries. It is also crucial for us as MPs to call on these countries to respect the human rights of migrants at all levels, including migrants in irregular situations.
There you have it, full updates from the 3-day migration forum in Niamey, Niger Republic. We'll go on a short break now, and there'll be more when we return.
Nigeria, there are still many there. There are many. I believe that those people they said that they are deep.
When you begin to hide yourself
Of the business I'm doing, how to keep business, like customer business, receipts.
You're welcome back. Now, back home in Nigeria, the federal government has issued a 6-month ultimatum for foreigners in the country to register with the Nigerian Immigration Service that's under the Migrant E-Registration Program. President Buhari said this is very important to be able to know the non-Nigerians residing in the country and also identify what they do for a living. This program has now kicked off with Kwara as the maiden state, and of course, more states are expected to follow. So on that note, we conclude this episode of the program. Remember, you can catch previous episodes and lots more on YouTube at TV360 Nigeria. You can also send your comments to us on social media at TV360 Nigeria as well. Thank you very much for watching.